So welcome to the third successive lecture on ethics. The first two lectures encompassed ethics in science and research. So at the end of the day, you need to publish your results. And today we are going to discuss on the ethics of publication. And what is the ultimate destiny of a scientist is very important. A scientist, the destiny of a scientist is to get to know, to discover, to publish. And this is the destiny of a scientist. Brevity in writing is the best insurance for its perusal. So if we want to define what is publication, it's nothing but the scholarly work that is published in the form of book, and that book could be of a single author, multiple author, or you can edit with multiple authors. Then you can publish articles in research journals, conference proceedings, or in preprint archives. So basically these four areas are there where you can publish your scientific results or scholarly work. Authors, journal editors, peer reviewers, and publishers together are involved in the act of publication of research output. Publication of an article in any one of the above forms that I have just discussed is an essential building block in the development of a comprehensive and reliable network of knowledge. So, research and publication process are built on trust, that is based on basic belief that information and data are collected and reported honestly without falsification and misrepresentation, so that the resulting literature can be used as a reliable basis for further work. Look, since there are huge career pressures to publish research outputs, unethical behavior on parts of the authors, journal editors, peer reviewers, and or publishers is unfortunately becoming more noticeable in recent times. So it should be noted that if a published work is subsequently found to be unreliable or dishonest, not only personal and institutional reputations are destroyed for good. Research efforts building upon such published work also suffers significantly in a cascading manner. So therefore, it is important for all parties to follow the highest standards of ethical behavior. The Committee on Publication Ethics, shortly known as COP or COPE, has articulated very detailed notes on ethical practices expected of authors, editors, reviewers, and publishers. So there are some general guidelines on ethical practices that should be followed in course of a publication. Now, who should be branded as authors and contributors? So we should have a clear idea about the authorship. Authorship confers credit for the work that has been carried out to result into a publication. This has many important academic, social, and financial implications. It is implicit that authorship entails responsibility and accountability for the published work. As advised by COPE, an author should have contributed to the manuscript in at least one or more of the following ways. So those who have contributed to the manuscript in one or more ways, and what are those ways? That is, number one, significant contribution to conception and or design of the work. Number two, it can be acquisition of data, analysis, and or interpretation of data generated or collected during the work. Third important criteria to brand you as an author when you are drafting or editing the work or revising it critically, and thus you are contributing important intellectual content. When a book, research article, or other category of research output is authored by one person, it is implicit that all the research work related to that publication was essentially carried out by that person, and he or she bears all responsibilities. In multi-authored publications, where you have multiple authors, means more than two authors are there, it becomes necessary to clearly identify the contribution of each author so that their responsibilities can be defined. In such publications, all the authors, however, have the collective responsibilities. What are those collective responsibilities? To be accountable for all aspects of the work, to ensure that questions related to the accuracy or integrity of any part of the work are appropriately investigated and resolved. Final approval of the version to be published. Each author should be able to identify which co-authors are responsible for which specific part of the work. So why the order of authorship in multi-authored publication becomes important? Who will be the first author? And what will be the order of the authors? Because, why is it important? Because often it is taken to reflect the relative contributions. That means the first author has contributed maximally, then the second, and likewise, and the last one could be the corresponding author, that means who has conceptualized the research and communicating this research on behalf of other authors. Such publications typically identify one or more authors as first authors. That could be one or more as corresponding authors, and others, if any, as co-authors. However, in the same group, it is customary to list authors alphabetically, sometimes with a note that all authors made equal contribution to the study and the publication. So the order of authorship should be a joint decision of the co-authors. All authors should be prepared to explain the order in which the authors are listed. And how do we take decision on this order of authors? Generally, this decision should be agreed upon before starting to write the article. It is desirable to inform the editor or journal about the relative contribution of each author to the study at an early stage. All the authors in a multi-author manuscript should agree to be listed and should approve the submitted and accepted versions of the publication. Any change to the author list, means change in the author list, should be approved by all authors, including anyone who have been removed from the list. So there is a role of the corresponding author. Means the author who is responsible for communicating on the part of the authors with the journals. The corresponding author of a manuscript is the individual who takes primary responsibility for communication with the journal during the manuscript submission. And he is constantly in touch with the journal during the peer review and the publication process. And also, he who generally ensures that all the journal's administrative requirements, such as providing details of the authorship, ethics committee approval, documentation related to clinical trials, collecting information on conflict of interest, etc., are adequately compiled with. So these are the collective role of it's the individual role of corresponding author. The corresponding author may, however, delegate some of this responsibility to one or more co-authors through mutual consent. The corresponding author must be available throughout the submission and peer review process to respond to the editorial queries in a timely manner. Additionally, he or she should be available after publication to respond to criticism of the work and cooperate with any request from the journal for data or additional information should question about the paper arise after publication. So there's a big responsibility for the corresponding author. And how do we share the credit? In some cases, there may be a need to share the credit of being the corresponding author with one or more co-authors. In such cases, all those designated as corresponding authors are expected to share the above mentioned responsibilities equally unless specified otherwise. Now, the name of the corresponding authors or author may come anywhere in the order as collectively agreed upon. Those identified as first authors would have carried out the bulk of the primary work that forms the basis of the article to be published. Persons other than those listed as authors may have contributed to the study in some ways. However, they do not have the right to be the co-authors in the study because they do not meet the above noted criteria. All such persons should be duly acknowledged for their contribution to the study at an appropriate place in the article. Examples of activities that do not qualify a contributor for authorship are procurement of funding, general supervision of a research group, or general administrative support. Those who provided only assistance in writing, technical editing, language editing, and or proofreading do not qualify to be the co-authors. So who should be acknowledged? The persons other than those listed as authors may have contributed to the study in some ways should be acknowledged. However, they do not have the right to be the co-authors in the study because they do not share the above noted criteria. All such persons should be duly acknowledged for their contribution to the study at an appropriate place in the article. Examples of activities that do not qualify a contributor for authorship are procurement of funding, general supervision of a research group, or general administrative support. Those who provided only assistance in writing, technical editing, language editing, and or proofreading do not qualify to be the co-authors. So undesirable authorship is another aspect. So some other types of authorships like guest authorship, honorary or gift authorship, and ghost authorship described that I'm going to describe sooner or later are grossly unethical and therefore unacceptable. So when we talk about the guest authorship, it is defined as authorship based exclusively on the expectation on the part of the other authors that inclusion of a particular name as co-author may improve the chances of the work getting accepted for publication or for other personal gains. It is unethical to include such guest author's name since he or she made no useful contribution to the study. Then the question of honorary or gift authorship. What is that? It is defined as an authorship which is based solely on feeble affiliation with the study. For example, head of the department of the institution, whose name is included solely because of his or her administrative position. This is called honorary or gift authorship. Another example of gift authorship is the inclusion of names of the colleagues on the understanding that he or she will do the same with the sole objective of swelling each other's publication lists. These kind of gift authorships are highly unethical. Now there are ghost authorship. In this case, although the person participated in the research, data analysis, and or writing of a manuscript, they are not listed as authors in the manuscript or while filing a patent application. It is unethical to exclude the name of the persons who have, by general principles, to be included as authors. So you never keep the name of those persons who have sincerely contributed to that. And those are called ghost authors. A different class of ghost authorship, which may not be unethical, is where a person contributed to a writing of a paper as a professional writer on payment or honorary basis, but will not be a co-author in the final manuscript. Such help should, however, be acknowledged in the acknowledgement section if required. So undesirable authorships is another aspect. This is anonymous authorship. Since authorship has to be transparent, so none's name should be spelled as anonymous and requires accountability. So it is improper to use pseudonyms or to publish scientific articles anonymously. Now, another aspect is surrogate authorship. There are the instances where manuscripts are written or got written by someone else without any original data of one's own. Such papers are often published in predatory or bogus journals. These acts are unethical and illegal. So my successive lectures after this lecture would be on predatory journals and predatory publications. So I start with this. So in order to ensure appropriate credits to all those actually involved in the given research output, many research journals ask and publish information about specific contribution of each listed author. A more widespread use of such practice would facilitate avoidance of unethical practice of including or excluding some persons as authors, and at the same time let the readers know about specific contribution of individual authors. So there is an ethical convention of publication, multiple submission. It is unethical and illegal to submit the report of a study, the same study you are trying to report in more than one journals at the same time. If authors want to submit their article to another journal, while it is still under consideration elsewhere, they must formally notify and request the editor of the journal in which it is under consideration about the withdrawal of their manuscripts for further consideration by that journal. Simultaneously, you cannot submit the same research work in multiple journals. All co-authors, they must agree to the request for withdrawal, and this agreement must be made clear to the editor of the journal with which the study is under consideration. Multiple publication, it is unethical and amounts to plagiarism to duplicate or reorganize or reformulate existing publication into new publications by willfully disguising the sources of work. The same work you are publishing in different journals under different titles, just changing the languages. This is highly unethical. This leads to multiple publication. Or think about a piece of the work. Now you slice it into different portion and you publish one of the slices in one journal, the second slice in the second journal, and third. This is salami publication. Like that of salami, it is being sliced. So slicing of a given study to produce several publications is also undesirable, as the significance of the study may be lost because of this piecemeal information in each. There is ethical conventions of publication. You must suggest potential reviewers. Some journals, they ask authors to suggest names of potential reviewers, and in some cases also of those whom the authors may or may not like to be the reviewer because of potential conflict of interest. So under these circumstances, it is unethical to suggest names of potential reviewers on the basis of friendship or acquaintance, which may enhance the likelihood of acceptance. So you are giving the name of, or you are suggesting the reviewer who is very much known to you, and that may enhance the likelihood of acceptance, but that is going to affect the quality of your paper, because that is not a good peer review. So it is absolutely unethical to suggest fictitious names as reviewers with self-directed addresses so that the authors become the reviewer as well. So this is also happening in the scientific world. You are suggesting a name of a reviewer, but that reviewer is you yourself in disguise. You have named yourself in some other name and you are proposing your name in disguise. So therefore the paper comes to you and you review your own paper. So that is absolutely unethical to suggest fictitious names. Error correction in a published paper. Authors may become aware after a work has been published of some errors in data or their interpretation due to an oversight. You have overlooked it or you have missed it. So if it was a case of inadvertent error in data collection or analysis or interpretation of the data, all authors, if it was a multi-authored publication, should be informed, and the error and its nature and implication on the final inferences should be reported to the editor of the journal. Authors may publish in consultation with the editor either an erratum or a new paper to rectify the previous error in the same journal. Now you can withdraw or retract of a published paper. Why the retraction is done? Author or editor of or a reader may notice certain suspect an act or suspect an act of a deliberate misconduct. What is that? Such as falsification of data or plagiarism, etc., on part of the authors in a published paper. This needs to be carefully investigated, especially by the journal, to establish the alleged misconduct. If established, all authors need to be informed about the same, and either the authors may decide to retract or withdraw the paper, or the journal may publish with due reason a retraction notice for the earlier published paper. So these are not desirable for a scientist to have his paper retracted because of falsified data and plagiarism. Such acts of misconduct, when established, are to be dealt by the responsible institutions following the regulations or laws in force at that particular time.